Gotten into my AI engineering and just playing around with agents and stuff. A lot of people asking what I'm doing. They want a little bit more depth in my explanation. So I figured I'd start this series, which will go through a little bit more of the nodes and what it is. So n8n as a whole is a kind of open source canvas you can use for free. There's paid options depending on what you're using it for, and then there's limited to no code, so you can actually fully customize things. There is a node that you can write whatever Python, JavaScript, whatever in there, make your whole fully customized node that does whatever you want. And then there's a lot of integrations that are already built in, which is really nice. Other options are like make.com, which is no code, but it's a little bit more limiting because you can only use the nodes that are there. So you're depending on them to integrate everything and make it available to you. For this video, I wanted to go into n8n's execution nodes and kind of talk through those one by one, and we'll dive into a little bit of them, but it'll be quick little 5-second spiels on each one. So the first one's the easiest one. Is just when clicking, it's a manual execution node. So if you're ever going to add a node, you just double click, right click. You can also do the plus button up here, add a node, and then down here to add another trigger manually. So what this one does is anytime you click it. So this is for testing. If you're in the actual canvas, you just want to execute your node real quick, that's there. You can bring these together. So let's just add a set node. I don't need anything in here for now. You could do on manual or on a schedule. So anytime either one of these these triggers happen, it would go through and start your workflow. Schedule trigger, it's pretty straightforward. If you want it every day, every 2 hours. I use this one for my social media posting workflows. So for TikTok, I want it every like 3 hours. For Instagram, every 6 hours, like depending on what you feel is necessary. That's just one example. If you want to go clean up a folder or a log or something, you set it up that way. A webhook. So real quick, difference between webhook and APIs. API calls are pushes. You're saying, hey, server, Slack, whoever, like I want this information. And then there's an authorization usually, unless it's a public API, and then you get the response. Webhook is more receiving. It's the listener. So you set up a webhook, it will give you a test URL or production URL, and say you have an event happening on your website, you have a chat bot, you have whatever, something happens on your hosted website, that would then trigger a call back to your n8n workflow. It would go through and do whatever action you need it to do away from the website. It's not directly hooked up. It can operate, and then it'll pass something back to it. On form submission, this is similar to the webhook, except for it's a form based, so it would be very structured. You would embed, say, a form onto your website. Say, contact us. Hey, contact us. They submit it. It comes in here. Your workflow then curates that data. It triggers something, either an automatic response or a message to you, or both, however you want to work through that. And that's what's on the submit, it gets triggered. When executed by another workflow, this is something I use with my social media manager, and I think a lot of people, when you get to understand this, is what you're going to want to do for complex things. You want one agent to kind of receive the initial response, make some decisions on what to do and how to respond, what tool to use, and then if it decides to do this tool, i.e. like for me as an example, TikTok versus Instagram versus LinkedIn, different posting styles, different formats, different consistencies and feels and stuff. So I want an individual agent to handle each one of those platforms. So the original agent, the main agent that's receiving, say, this form submission, is going to receive it, make some decisions based off what was provided, and then decide which platform to go or which decision to go. When chat message is received, this one I'm not as familiar with. There is a chat option down here. you could talk directly to it. So instead of hooking up a message service like Slack uh, or Teams or whatever, you could just chat directly with this and put the messages in there. Going in here, this is something I didn't add in here, was the message trigger, which was on app event. So you can add in here all sorts of different things. Asana, you can add in um, AWS, as you can see, all these different options. What I use a lot is the Telegram. So Telegram, you have on callback query, on channel posts, on yada yada yada. On message is what I use. Slack, all of these are massive apps, massive list of apps. And then each one of these, I don't know what Hunter is. But every time one of these events on schedule, on web call, every time an email address is found on the internet, anytime these things happen, it kicks off your workflow. And that's going to be specific on which one of these apps are kind of being integrated and how they're being integrated and what the job should be from there. But that's just a starting point. When fetching data set from fetching a data set row, so credentials document containing data set, so it's going to go out every so often and pull, like say you were updated database, it would go in and pull that database in and then kick off whatever decisions from there. So for example, I store a lot of my media content and content creation in a Google Drive, in a Google Sheet, in Cloudinary. I store them in different places, and then I pull everything together in a Google Sheet, and then it can run through that row by row and make decisions based off of it. That one I have not played with yet, so that might be interesting for me once I start to build out that sheet. Maybe I might switch over to that going forward once I get a good repo of material kind of built up. Email trigger, pretty straightforward. Same thing with a messenger, but when you get an email that comes in, again, contact us. You say, hey, if it comes into manager, if it comes into maintenance, it comes into etc. Make these decisions, do this and that. That's a great example of, say, an after hours maintenance request. It's going to automatically make some decisions. It'll contact X provider. If say it's a HVAC decision, well, you already have a list of who to reach out to and what to say to them. So it goes forward and does that. Error trigger, that one is for if anything happens within your workflow or in your instance. So one good example is these API calls sometimes cost money, and you have to put $20, $50, $100 in there just to make sure every time you put a call out, it has enough money in the bank account to actually process that call. So there's a lot of them depending on how complex it is. Maybe you run down to zero, you don't have money to actually execute that call. So this would gather that error information and then do something. Maybe it tries it again. Maybe you have an if or. So if this request in, first try this. If it errors, then try this, then try that. Your SSE is on your server events. So your server side events is what SSE stands for. So if something happens within your server, it sends essentially a webhook or a URL it gets pushed to this n8n instance, and then it executes a workflow from there. Not as familiar with this, as you can tell, very high level explanation. And then your MCP server. Your MCP is kind of a standardization of documentation and stuff. So you kind of hook up your MCP instance to server to this instance, and based off of whatever call comes in, whatever it's asking for, it kind of acts like an API as I understand it. I haven't played with this one very much. It's pretty new. So I'll try and do some more explanations on that. Let me see if I missed anything. So again, each one of these is as simple as add a node, and then you add your initial trigger manually on app event. It goes all the way down. Other ways to do this, And yeah, that's basically it. And then from here, you just start building things out. So when a chat message is received, maybe it goes straight into your bot, starts making some decisions. Maybe you want to standardize some things. One thing that I've learned is a big deal is to normalize. So maybe someone uses capitalization, maybe someone uses lowercase. You don't know how the message is going to get brought in, but there's key information that you're trying to get out of whatever that information is. Say the form is a great example. Even then, you got a form that says, give me your name, date of birth, message. From there, someone types their name in lowercase, but your decision is based off of a standardized uppercase first letter. Then you need to normalize this in some way. So you would add the fields in here of, you would name it variable first name, and then you would add your JavaScript in here that would normalize it out to say, hey, no matter what you receive, no matter what lowercase, uppercase, standardize it to this format. And then the rest of your workflow can go pretty well from there. I will go into a little bit more of these nodes as we go and start to build out some use cases and examples. But here we go. Here's the start. Thanks for watching.